Alright, hello. Welcome to Growing Tree Creations. This is my first tutorial, and today we're going to work on this add-on veil right here. And in the future I will have a tutorial for this pendant that will require an O-ring and or an add-on veil for it to hang properly. This is a non-uniform stone, and so that tutorial will focus on a simple wrap for a non-uniform stone. So be watching for that. Alright, so these are the supplies that we're going to need. Some cutters, jeweler's pliers, fine chain nose pliers, 26 gauge weaving wire, and 18 gauge base wire. Something to measure with, and something, I use a dowel to wrap your bale over. So it just has to be uniform and round. Okay. So here I have about 8 inches of the 18 gauge base wire and about a yard of the 26 gauge. I have a really hard time not kinking the wire when I leave it on the spool, so I just cut off more than I think I'll need, and then I have scraps left over. If you are up for a little bit more of a challenge and you want a smaller veil, this is the 18 and 26 gauge that I'm going to be demonstrating in this tutorial. Let's see if I can get it to focus on that. There we go. And this, if you want it a little more challenging, is a 20 gauge base wire with a 28 gauge weaving wire. And it really is quite a bit more challenging because the base wire wants to wobble and bend as you weave it, so it doesn't want to hold its shape quite as well. But that is an option. Okay. Okay. Alright. So what we're going to do is, on this right here, we're going to start at this piece, which I'm not sure if you can see very well. It is not quite round, it's actually kind of a diamond shape. And I just really like the way that that looks on there. So if you prefer round, you could use a set of these and make it a round tip. That would be a little easier. But I like the way that it looks. So I want to find my kind of off-center and bent, and just kind of make the bottom of that diamond here. And this is where it will hold your pendant. So you don't want to ding up the wires too bad. And you want it to be pretty uniform because it'll be a highly visible space. Okay, so now I'm just going to wedge my pliers in here at this very tip on the side, and I'm going to hold on to that because I want to really fine. Then I'm going to just bend this wire over this way. Okay, and then I'm going to pop over here to the other side and do exactly the same thing. And then we'll have kind of this shape going on. Okay, and then we're going to go into, not this side, but we'll put our pliers right here on this side, butted right up against that other wire. It's kind of our guide. Okay, so we're going to take the wire that we're holding with the pliers and we're going to push it back, kind of back towards itself, And then we're going to come over here to this side. I'm going to kind of, there we go. Alright, so we're going to come back on the side here. And we'll pull it kind of back towards itself. And we'll have this kind of a V shape. Okay, so now that I've got this, I can see I'm pretty lopsided. And so I'm going to need to fix that, because this is, like I said, a highly visible spot. So we don't want it to be really off-center. I might have widened that just a little bit, but that's okay. I'll have this one too. It looks good. Okay. So if you feel like I'm kind of mumbling, I just kind of talk to myself a little bit while I'm shaping stuff, and probably the only thing you're going to miss hearing me say is like, oh, yeah, that looks good, or no, that didn't work out. So it's not really anything significant. If I have important information for you, I always try to make my voice more clear, so that there isn't anything missed. Alright, I kind of like that. It looks really good. Okay, so now that we have the shape that we want down here, we're going to make this neck right here that sits under these wires. So now is the time to decide how many times you want to wrap your wire around the base for your finished look. I'm not sure why my camera's having a hard time with the zoom in. Alright, see, I'm still working out some kinks. I'm not really proficient with technology stuff. I'm more of a handy-dandy kind of person. Non-technologically handy. Okay, so you just want to carefully shape this into a straight neck, if you will. And you want to remember that because this is one wire that we're working with, anything that you do later on down here can change the shape of what you've already worked on. So always go back and observe any major changes that you make here. See what happens to what you've already worked on at every step along the way, and fix things as they come up. Don't save them for, after you've already woven on it or anything like that, because it becomes much more difficult. Alright. So now we have this nice straight neck, and I'm just going to kind of tweak the overall shape of this piece right here. I feel like it's just a little that. Alright. Okay, so now you need to decide how many times you want to go around and leave a gap big enough for that. So excuse me, if you wanted to do I have a variation of this that you'll want to plan ahead for. So here I have just this scrap of sterling silver 20 gauge wire. It's about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches long, and I gave myself a little bit extra. Really, I think anyone who works with wire has scraps this size, so maybe just take advantage of scraps that you already have. But if you wanted to make this a sterling and copper piece, you could incorporate a band, like an alternating band of sterling silver. So sterling, copper, sterling, copper, sterling, copper. And it would end up, well, I don't have the piece in here, but it would end up looking really neat. It'd be a way to incorporate sterling silver pendant and sterling silver chains, or just, those silver look, if you wanted to do that. So I'll show you that at the future steps. So I want to kind of make sure that this is straight, and it's pretty straight, so we're going to move on to shaping the base of our bail. Now, these small pliers seem to wire work the wire a little faster, so for pieces that are going to get a lot of tweaking, or probably a lot of tweaking, I want to use these ones. I think it's a matter of surface area and pressure, but I don't really know. So I just want to figure out how long I want my neck to be. I want it to be shorter than this one. I feel like I made this one's neck a little longer than I want it. And that has 6 wraps around. This one has 4. So I think I'm going to try to aim for something in between this one and that one. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so I want to take my wire and bend it out. Yeah, I think that's going to be a nice neck. Alright, and then I want to come over here and do the same thing, and I want it to be as close to perfect as possible. Like, because this is going to show, you're going to see if one comes up at a different angle, if it comes out at a lower or higher point. Like, you'll see that on the finished product. Using a sterling silver bead at this point, once it's done, will help distract from any deviations at this point, but it will only do so much. So I want to aim for about that width, because I'm going to stop it right about here and bring it back this way towards itself, to where this will make a diamond shape. So the overall height of this bail will be about like this. So, and you can deviate from this. You can change so many factors in here. You can make it with almost no neck and bring this wire up further on the bail. This piece of the bail, right? So you could bring, and it could go from being a narrow wraparound to a wider wraparound, and that would be a neat effect. So yeah, just make it your own. I encourage people to deviate from my direct tutorial and just benefit from the techniques that I cover. And please, if you're watching this and you're following this tutorial, please leave a comment below with the work that you've done. I would love to see it. Okay, so you just want to really spend the time you need to tweak this just right, to make it just the right, because it's really going to make the difference on the finished piece if you get it just right at this stage. And this 18 gauge wire really holds up well to the weave we're going to do. If you've never done that weave before, I encourage this 18 gauge and the 26 with the weaving. With this one, even I kind of fudged it. It's very wonky looking in the back. So be really careful if you go with a smaller gauge set of wires. I feel like that is just not coming off the right way. So leave me a comment below. Do you prefer if, while I'm doing all this fine tweaking, I pause the video to make a shorter tutorial? Or do you like being able to see how I tweak stuff and figure it out while I'm doing that step? So let me know, and maybe I'll change my format a little bit, tweak it, or produce both, maybe. Not for each tutorial, but just kind of mix it up. Alright, so I'm happy with that now. My household is waking up. There we go. Alright. that makes me happy. We're going to go with this 26 gauge wire now. I like to leave a little tail. This will be for putting that bead in there if you want to put a bead at the base of the V, but you'll want to do that last after everything else is all done. So you leave the tail on there, and I want to come right to the center of this V, but not below it, because I want these two wires to not have a wire between them, because they're going to be wrapped nice and tight. It's going to hold everything together real good. So I'm just going to kind of wedge this into that cavity to where it's technically kind of below it, but this one isn't. And I'm going to wrap it over once, over one more time, but not completely, and instead of going around that first wire, we're going to go under the second wire and come towards ourselves. One wrap, push that down good, and then before completing the other wrap, coming back down to the first wire. We are making a figure 8 shape with this wire. Right now the weave is too tiny for me to be able to really show you that, but I will when it gets a little bit further along. So over completely one time, over halfway the second time, and switch base wires. Coming back around one full time, one half time, switching wires. And you just continue that pattern until this V is nice and secure. And you're not going to be changing the angle that your wires have coming right here from this corner. That's going to like really hold it in place while you shape the other part. Okay, so we're going to do that now. I'm going to measure because this is a very difficult thing to get just so by eyeballing it. So I'm going to come right here, and I want to do, I don't know, 3/4 of a centimeter maybe. So we'll go to this point right here. And then I'm going to take this wire and bend it in. That'll be refined in a minute. Alright, and then come over here and do this one. You know what? I'm not sure I measured that quite right. I'll just double check. And then I'm going to do the same over here. Right, oops. Okay. Kind of a... Alright, so even measuring, cannot seem to get this nice and even. And I don't know why I struggle with this part so much, but I do. Do every time. There. Okay, I think I like that. So now that I've got this part, the shape that I want, now I'm just going to refine these angles that'll give me a mirrored angle so that it's a diamond shape. Okay, in this process you want to be careful not to shrink or expand this area that you're working on in the lower half, because that's going to change the shape of the way that your weave that you've already completed is done. So you want to do this step before it gets very far along. Okay, so same way we did down here at the bottom. Actually, that seems a little shallow. There we go. Same way that we did down at the bottom, we're going to bring the wire back towards itself and into a V pattern or shape. Alright, so I'm going to use the chain nose pliers, and we're going to butt those pliers right up against that spot again, just like we did last time. And we're going to bring the wire back to itself, or towards you rather, kind of like that. And I'm going to come in here and do the same, with the other side. There we go. So now we have that. I'll push those together. It should be about right. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to kind of fix a boo-boo here. Alright, so I don't know if you can see that this wire and this wire are not really quite right. This one bends lower than this one does. So I'm going to pick one, the one that I like the least, the one that I think looks less attractive. And, oops, okay, so hold on, first I'm going to kind of tweak this and see what that does. Sometimes minor adjustments in like little kinks or whatever that you've gotten along the way on your base wire, any kind of little misshapenness or like not flat, it's got, I don't know, sometimes I can't find the right words, but anyway. So I think this is the one I'm going to do. So here you have this, you have a corner here. This is, right? So I'm going to take my jeweler's pliers and I'm going to straddle that wire. Let's see if you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to bring my pliers right here and I'm going to get to a fat part of those pliers and just press down with that, the tip of that triangle on one of my plier sides, and it will just flatten it right back out with like the least amount of trauma. And then you just find a point very close to where that was to make your change. Okay. Alright, so once you're happy with this shape, you can move on to the next step. I'm not really that happy with this shape. It is not the most uniform or pretty. Somehow I managed to kind of kink this base wire in a way that it doesn't want to really flatten with the pliers. And that's what's causing my weird look. I'm thinking that it is just about ready. Okay, so So here we have our shape, and we're going to get back to weaving. All right. Just going to kind of realign things. Okay, that's already on its second round, so we're going to bring it over. Okay, so now we're coming up on probably the most challenging part of this tutorial, and it's because this angle that we have here, once we get to this point and we're descending in loop size, our bigger loops want to fall down into our smaller loops, and our smaller loops want to slide down the bar lower than the one before it, and then, well, it's smaller down there, so you can't push it down to get snug against the previous one. So it's really hard to make this one look as nicely as this one. So you really have to kind of like hold your wire in place. If you don't have fingernails, that might be really, really hard. Because that's what I use. I hold my fingernail against that weaving wire and press down on my base wire, and it holds it right where I want it while I'm wrapping the next round, and it allows me to really hold that in place. And I press that one down and I switch sides, so now I'm using my fingernail to hold this one down on the base wire while I wrap this side, and that'll secure it into place, and I go back. Alright, so I don't know if you can see the figure 8 of it. It's a very small figure 8 and not the best zoom, so there you go. So you are just crossing those wires over. Alright, hopefully you're doing well in this step. Leave me a comment, let me know how you did with this step. I'm sure there's some people that won't struggle with it really. But I think it's probably the most challenging part of making a bale of this style. Yeah, here we go. See, I'm not holding it, and so it's slide down. Okay. Woo-hoo-hoo. Oh. I just about gave myself an extra wrap around. It gets more challenging to hold on to it as it gets further down the base wire. Just kind of push them down. Okay, and then after we're done with this step, you can pick a favorite side before we shape it. So sometimes from the very beginning, wherever like my first mistake, whichever side it shows up worse on becomes the bottom. And I try really hard to make any mistakes show up on the bottom side instead of the top side. So like if I make a mistake, but I can go in and maybe alter the mistake but not remove it, then I will alter the mistake to a less visible area. And then what happens during that process is typically I deviate from my original intended plan and it becomes something of its very own. So it's kind of interesting how that happens. This is getting quite challenging. See how I have a little gap there? I don't know if you can see that. There we go. See how right there's a little gap in my weave? That'll always be there. I won't get rid of it. I don't know. I slide it down, it stays down. I might be able to compensate for that at the very end of this. And I'll show you that step in a minute. Make sure you're really pulling your wires nice and snug around the base wire. That's how you get good uniform crisscross in the middle. It's having your wires pulled at the exact same tightness as the one adjacent to it. Okay, so I'm pretty much done right there. I'm going to get ready. Now, once we're down here at the end, we can kind of squeeze in some extra stitches or weave wraps because it's going to kind of force everything under this V to compress against the thing below it. So it will help to tighten up those last little bits that we weren't able to get while we were doing the weave itself, but not much. So if there's big gaps, it won't help those, but little teeny tiny gaps, it can help some of those. Okay, so now we're down here at the very end. Not sure if you can see. Let's see if we can get it to zoom. Okay, it's not wanting to zoom, but there's no gaps there anymore. I can't see light through it, this space here, so we're good. Okay, now we're going to use our pliers to make sure that that's nice and straight. Alright, now I'm just leaving this weaving wire on, but we're probably completely done with it. Alright, if you're going to use a bead, you are not done with this. I am done with this, but I'm going to keep it there. Alright, so now we're going to use our dowel rod or similar tool. If you're working with a really small, the smaller gauge wire, you want a smaller tool that is just completely round. And pick your side here. Pick which side looks better to you. I think that this side looks better to me. Yeah, because I got a kind of funky wire right there. Otherwise, this would be the better side. Yep, I think this is going to be my better side. So it's going to be on the top. And I want to line up my dowel rod with the widest point because that's going to be the top, and then I'm just going to push the other two sides down around the dowel. And what I want is for this part to be right between these ones. So I'm just going to keep pushing this around the dowel until I get to about there. And then I'm going to slide my dowel out. And here we have this. Okay. Now, see how this point right here at the base of the weave and this point here at the base of the weave are about matched up? That's pretty much what we want, and we're going to push these a little bit closer to each other, but not completely against each other. Okay. Alright. So now we're going to spread this just a little, and we're going to press that a little bit more. There we go. Now we've made our opening a little smaller. Looks more uniform. Here's our veil, is really taking shape. Okay, so now that we're at this point, we're going to need to take some pliers because we're going to want to give this a little elbow. Yeah, I think we'll go with this one. We want to give this a little elbow at about the halfway point, and you want to try not to do what I just did because that dinged up my wire really bad. I don't know if you can see how bad I just dinged up my wire right here on this corner. That'll be on the back side, so it's not completely devastating, but ooh, I hate those little dings. Alright, and we just want these to be just the tiniest bit offset because one's going to sit on top of the other. Alright, so here we have this. Looks like this one's going to come over the top of this one when I wrap it around. Alright, I'm going to switch pliers. These ones, remember, they work our wire a little bit too much sometimes, so this is... Alright, now see how much extra wire I have here? We don't need all that. So we're going to go ahead and take this time to cut off our excess because that just gets really in the way when we're trying to wrap and tighten. But we don't want to cut off more than we need to because we want to have a nice good gripper down here that we can ding up and damage that's not going to be in our pretty sight, you know, once it's all done. So you want to make sure you got enough of this tail to really cut some off when you're done with this step. Okay, so this is how I get these wraps to look so nice. These ones are a little kind of off, but this one, like, so nice and even and uniform and looking good. This is the technique that I use for that. So I will make a little, I'll get right about halfway here, and I will start making myself a circle, a really big circle. And basically this circle is your pre-loop shape. And it's to keep from mangling this too much when we tighten it. So it also keeps these wires from getting all kinds of crimped up if you're going through a hole. Because for this particular style we're not, but for in a lot of cases this technique is used to go through this space, like in this style, for example. See how I have this and it goes through this loop? You have to make that round shape, otherwise you're going to get kinks and bends in your wires, and these little roundy spots are not going to look so nice. So, okay. Now you don't want to wrap this tightly around your little neck yet. See how it's a nice... See how there's a nice big loop there around that? It's not tiny. It's not flush, even close. It's just wrapped around it nice and neat. Alright, so I'm going to do the same with this wire in the opposite direction. I'm going to come down about halfway and start making me a circle. You want to use something that's not going to damage your wire real bad, because this is the part you can see that you're curving into a circle. You just want to give some gentle support here without squishing your piece where your weaves are. Okay. Alright, so now we've got a circle loop around each way, one time. I'm going to be doing 2 times with each wire. So we need to come down more. Now this provides some tension resistance on each side so that we can tighten more without damaging this shape as much. My cat's up here. She likes to play with my wire. Really likes to play with my wire. Alright, so I've got 3 of my 4 loops. Just going to kind of bring them together. They're really loose right now. They are going to be tightened more once I get these kind of in position, so to speak. And then I'll show you what to do with that sterling silver wire if you are interested in doing that. Give me just a minute to finish up this one. Okay, I did not leave myself very much tail because I'm not going to have to cut any more off, I don't think, or very little. So it's more of a challenge in working it because I don't have that extra tail leverage to work with. So it's just really a matter of, be careful, just a matter of getting it lined up in a way that you really like the way it looks, because that's what matters. Alright, so gonna get that. We got to pay attention to what we're doing with our little wire here. If you're going to put a bead on it, keep it out of the way because you want it above the top wrap. You don't want to have to come from underneath of that wrap to put that bead in place. You want it to stay above that. If you are not going to do a bead, you can go ahead and get rid of it now. But I'm going to wait to show you how to get rid of it really well. If you don't have precision cutters, like I don't have, then you're going to have to be a little more creative so you don't have pokey wire sticking out. Just break the wire off at the base wire and it will come off cleanly. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you shortly. Alright, so I am really quite happy with how well this one turned out. I made one yesterday that was very challenging. Took me a lot longer to make it. Okay, we're looking pretty good here. Alright, so if you were wanting to put in a sterling silver wire, probably would have been better to make a longer neck than what I made, because I didn't really leave any room for that sterling silver wire. But I will show you how to incorporate it, and you can do that on your own. Alright, so I'm trying to get this piece to look right. Just doing fine tuning. That's really what this step is. This is just fine tuning this. Trying to not do what I just did there. Alright, so now see how I've got this piece? I don't know why my camera won't zoom. It's driving me crazy. But there's the wire tail. I've got it in between this space here. I don't know if you can see that through there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck that little tail in between the arch of the bail, nestled at the bottom, pressed against the front side. Okay, then I can do some more shaping and fine tuning because that'll be anchored. Now you want to be super careful when you press this inside that you don't damage your woven wires, because those just don't want to go back once you ding them when they're already on the base wire. So be super careful. Okay, so here we have pretty much done, just about one more little tweak. All right, here we go. All right, so that is done. If we don't want to do anything else, no bead, no sterling, then you can do what I'll do on this back side here. Actually, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait because I'm going to show you how to do the bead, and it's possible that this will be needed to make the bead sit right. So here I have my super tiny sterling silver bead, and we'll just string it on that weaving wire. This is a, I don't really know. I think it's a 2mm seamless ball sterling silver bead that I got from Fire Mountain Gem. And it just kind of sits there, sticks off the bail a little bit. I'm going to move my tools out of the image and see if it will let my camera zoom in. So I'd really like to show you the way this is laying so that you can know. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Look at that. That looks so great. So that little bead, it kind of sticks out a lot. I'm not really a fan of how much it sticks out personally, but if you have like a deep little space right here, or if your bail's a little bigger or your bead's a little smaller, probably look really good. Okay, so now for this incorporating the sterling silver, what we're just going to do is we're going to lay it between the copper ridges. And you want to be careful because in the process of bending the sterling wire you can separate the copper and end up giving yourself a gap where you don't want it. Because what we want is for, even though the sterling is 20 gauge and the wire we've got here is 18, it's just the only sterling silver wire I have that was big enough to do this job. So, so this is something that I did on another bail, but I did the sterling silver first, and that really made it a lot easier to do, for sure. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pre-shape the sterling with this, and if you don't want to do this, then you can just watch for technique, or you can turn off the video, and if that's the case, it was really good being able to provide you with this tutorial. And don't forget to subscribe and like and hit the bell and all that other good fun stuff, so that you can know when I'm working on something else. Alright, so this is bigger than we need it to be, and that's exactly what we want. And we're just going to wrap it around itself. Alright, just like that. We've basically just made a sterling silver, what is that, a jump ring? We're going to do that. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we're going to spread this out like this to where it looks kind of like a spring. We're going to not use that. Okay. So this is going to end up looking like a spring. It really, really makes a difference when you pre-curve your wire. When you're doing things that are fairly wide wires that you're wrapping into tight circles, if you want nice uniform circular pattern, you want to pre-shape your rounds. I should have demonstrated this before I wrapped the copper, because I could have removed the silver. Sorry for not doing that. It would have been a much more accurate way to show you how to do this. So if you're doing the sterling silver, You want it to fall between and how you do that is just kind of shape it into the cracks with your pliers. And what happens is that allows it to sit between those copper layers without going all the way down to the base wire below it, because then it will be recessed. It won't sit flush with the copper because it's smaller, which might be a really cool look. But you would just have to experiment with that and leave me a comment with those results, so I can check it out, because I would like to see your work. I really would. So yeah, this is more trouble than it's worth. I think anyone who really wants that challenge can get the idea pretty well about how I'm going about this. So actually, I think that looks really cool, so now I want to finish it because I'm going to keep it. Yeah, that looks even more cool than the other one that I made that I was trying to show you how to do, because that sterling just sits on top of the crack and it kind of skips one, and it looks really, really neat. You want to be careful not to push your wires down too far. Okay, wow, that looks really neat. Let's see if we can get a close-up for you. There. That looks pretty cool. What do you think? You like it better with or without the sterling silver wrapped in there? Nice. Alright, I'm going to keep it. And with that extra sterling, that bead won't stick out so much, so I'm going to put that back on there too. And you'll get to see. I'm going to use, so I put the bead on one side of the wire, and then this other wire that I said I wasn't going to break off because I might need it, I'm going to need it, so I'm going to put it through the opposite direction to where both wires are holding that bead from opposite directions. And I am just going to, oh, actually, hold on. Glad I caught that. Okay, see how this weaving wire is on the back and this one's on the front. So really I want to bring this weaving wire to the front as inconspicuously as possible. So I am going to run it right along the top, and I'm going to take the tip of this weaving wire and I'm going to push it down into the middle here, if it'll let me. This is another reason I like these dental tools. This has such a nice fine point to it that you can get in there and make a space just big enough for your wire. Be careful, don't stab yourself, and don't damage your weave. This is how I do some of the more complex, tiny pieces that I do. Is the only way to attach one space to another is to poke a hole big enough for your wire to go through. And so some pieces I have to poke a hole for every wire that goes through a space. That's a very tight fit. It doesn't want to go. A sewing machine needle works really well too, because it's got a nice thing for you to hold on to. The part that goes into the sewing machine is a good space to hold on to while you force the tip of the needle between your weaving wires. Basically, you're just trying to make room for one more weave loop. And this tail I've got inside here is getting in my way for the back side of this wire. Alright, I think that will do it. Oh, that's not the one I want in there. There we go. Alright, so I've got it poked through here. And I'm just going to use this tool. 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 I'm just going to Actually, I don't want it to go that way. Pay very close attention to which way you're poking your wires out when you're really trying to line them up for use. Save yourself a lot of time by not accidentally putting it out the wrong side. Alright. Now we have it right where we want it to be. And we're going to pull it through. Oops. We're going to try to pull it through. It's a tight fit. There we go. Now, I'm just going to try to get this piece to come through nice and snug. We want it to lay right against everything it's on. Oh, and I just lost my bead, but that's okay. Alright, now I'm going to trim this because we have way more than we need. Alright, so go. Okay, beautiful. Now, track down my little runaway bead. Come here, you. Alright, put it back on that wire. And now we're going to put this one through there. And we are just going to pull those snug and position that bead just where we want it to sit. Pull both sides nice and tight. That'll center that bead and it'll get it nice and snug in that little tiny cavity that it's got to nestle into. And that looks great. Okay, now we need to anchor the ends of these base wires, or these weaving wires, before we break them off. So I'm just going to look for the best place to do that. I think I'm just going to loop this through one more time and show you the break method. So I'm going to find a space between these weaves, if I can get in there. You will need to be very, very careful doing this. If you don't have a needle, then you might not want to do this, like a needle or a dental tool or something very tiny and fine. You may want to find another way, another place to anchor your weaving wires so that your bead doesn't end up falling off in the future. And you want to make sure that you get right in where you want to get in. Actually, I'm going to change gears. I don't think that's a very good space to try to get into. Like, I think it's going to be really challenging to get in there. So, oh well, we're going to have to give it a try. Sometimes bending the tip to give yourself a straighter angle makes a world of difference. In fact, it always makes a world of difference. That really makes a big difference. Alright, so now that I've got that looped around a couple of times, I'm going to do this to break it off at the, you know what? No. There we go. Alrighty. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to get that piece nice and anchored in. And bend my tip. If we've got a really wrinkly tip, just cutting it off and giving it a new end helps. that. Kind of damaged the look of my weave, I hope. But this wire covers that damage. Alright, so before you pull it tight, see how this is kind of an offset loop? I don't know if you can see the angle. It's got, yeah, so it's not going to come in where it came out. So you want to make sure that you get real low on that so that it hugs the wires it's on, so that it can get down in that crack and hug that base wire where it needs to. Whoa! Yep. Sometimes you just gotta be really careful. And this is how you break those weave wires off. Just get it into a tight spot where it's not going anywhere and it's snug against a base wire. And you just twist it until it breaks off, and it'll break off nice and flush. Alright, so there we go.